arouse suspicion. His exterior was that of a highly refined and polished man. His grey tweed suit bore evidence of having been cut by a smart tailor, and as he lolled back in his big saddle-bag chair he contemplated the fine diamond upon his white, well-manicured hand, and seemed entirely at his ease. That August afternoon was stiflingly hot, and through the open French windows leading into the old world garden, so typically English with its level lawns, neatly trimmed box hedges and blazing flower beds, came the drowsy hum of the insects and the sweet scent of a wealth of roses everywhere. The pretty house in which his host, Philip Poland, alias Louis Lessar, lived, stood back a little distance from the London road, 2 miles or so out of the quiet market town of Andover, a small picturesque old place surrounded by high old elms wherein the rooks cawed incessantly and commanding extensive views over Harewood Forest and the undulating meadowlands around, while close by, at the foot of the hill, nestled a cluster of homely thatched cottages, with a square church tower, the obscure village of Middleton. In that rural retreat lived the Honourable Philip Poland beneath a cloak of highest respectability. The Elms was, indeed, delightful after the glare and glitter of that fevered life he so often led, and here, with his only child Sonia, to whom he was so entirely devoted, he lived as a gentleman of leisure. Seldom he went to London, and hardly ever called upon his neighbours. With Sonia he led a most retired existence, reading much, fishing a little, and taking long walks or cycling with his daughter and her fox terrier, Spot, over all the countryside. To the village he had been somewhat of a mystery ever since he had taken the house 3 years before. Yet being apparently comfortably off, subscribing to every charity, and a regular attendant at Middleton Church, the simple country folk had grown to tolerate him, even though he was somewhat of a recluse. Country folk are very slow to accept a stranger at his own valuation. Little did they dream that when he went away each winter he went with a mysterious purpose, that the source of his income was a mystery. As he stood there leaning against the roll-top writing table of his prettily furnished little study, and facing the man who had travelled half across Europe to see him, Phil Poland, with clean-shaven face and closely cropped hair tinged with grey, presented the smart and dapper appearance of a typical British naval officer, as indeed he had been, for prior to his downfall he had been first lieutenant on board one of His Majesty's first-class cruisers. His had been a strangely adventurous career, his past being one that would not bear investigation. In the smart, go-ahead set wherein he had moved when he was still in the Navy, opinion regarding him had been divided. There were some who refused to believe the truth of the scandals circulated concerning him, while others believed and quickly embellished the reports which ran through the service clubs and wardrooms. Once he had been one of the most popular officers afloat, yet to-day, well, he found it convenient to thus efface himself in rural Hampshire and live alone with the sweet young girl who was all in all to him, and who was happy in her belief that her devoted father was a gentleman. This girl with the blue eyes and hair of sunshine was the only link between Phil Poland and his past. That past, when he held a brilliant record as a sailor and had been honoured and respected. He held her aloof from everyone, being ever in deadly fear lest by some chance word she would learn the bitter truth. The truth concerning that despicable part which he had been compelled to play. Ah, yes, his was a bitter story indeed. Before Sonia should know the truth he would take his own life. She was the only person remaining dear to him, the only one for whom he had a single thought or care, the only person left to him to respect and to love. Her influence upon him was always for good. For the past year he had been striving to cut himself adrift from evil, to reform, to hold back from participating in any dishonest action for her dear sake. Her soft-spoken words so often caused him to hate himself and to bite his lip in regret, for surely she was as entirely ignorant of the hideous truth as Mr. Shuttleworth, the white-headed parson, or the rustic villagers themselves. Yes, Phil Poland's position was indeed a strange one.